Hello, my name is Sam Packard, and I'm with the Packard Law Firm. And today we're going to talk about how to fill out your work history report for Social Security. So let's just jump straight into it. Share my screen. Okay, so Social Security will often ask people to fill out these forms really multiple times. If you're over the age of 50, we have found that this report is extremely important. Interestingly enough, if you're under 50, it's almost not important at all. You still have to do it, otherwise they'll deny your case, but it doesn't have a whole lot of impact on your case. However, it flips over the age of 50. Once you become 50, new laws come into play, and suddenly this report becomes very, very important. So what I'll do is I'm going to go through the report and give some pointers on how to fill it out. Of course, the first couple of pages is just some of I guess disclaimers and other unimportant information that the government is telling us. The first real page is this one right here. So the work history report. This is pretty straight. Section 1 is very straightforward. Your name and social, phone number, whether it's your number, your message number, you can just click your phone number. Section 2 is also fairly important. Um, so in this section, essentially it is kind of like a table of contents. It's where you will list all the jobs you've done in the past 15 years. They don't want jobs before that. And later on, the other pages, you'll see here, the next page is job title 1. That corresponds to number 1 right here. So this is kind of like, what you want to do is list the types of jobs you've done. So let's say that you've worked at 3 different restaurants, but in all 3 restaurants you were waiting tables. Okay. So you would put on here job title, waitress or waiter, and type of business would be the food industry or the restaurant industry. So yeah, you can do it by type. It doesn't have to be by specific employers. And then the dates work is just the range. You don't have to be exact on this. You can go based on year. If you know the month, great. If you don't, that's okay. And you'll do that for every job. The job title, the area of work, whether that was, it can be, the area of work could be, let's say the job title was, I don't know, let's say it was a caseworker, and the type of business would be, a caseworker would be, legal, legal assistant. So, and the date range could fit there. Okay, now here's something I just want to point out. The government does have reports that they generate behind the scenes. And what they'll do is they will compare what you've written down here to what they have in their system. And in their system, they have every single employer that's ever reported you as their employee. So it gets very detailed, but between the two, the government's able to figure out the kind of work you've done between what you write down and what their reports show. Well, that also means that you don't have to stress too much on remembering everything. So if you do forget something, it's okay. The government's report is going to kind of help fill in the gap. But we do want to report what you do remember the best you can. Okay. So let's move into this next section here. And really every page after that is essentially the same. So you have job title 1 corresponds to this. And then on the page after that, whoops, I skipped one, but oh well. Job title 3 would relate to 3 on the table of contents page, 4, and so forth. And each of these pages are the same. Okay, so let's just go over this page. The rate of pay, you'll fill in the rate of pay, and then you'll select how it's best described by hour, day, week, month, year. So depending on your frequency of pay will also impact what the rate of pay. And the government takes this rate of pay and multiplies it by one of these labels to determine what your monthly, they are trying to figure out how much you're earning per month. Also, you can indicate how many hours per day and days per week you would work. This section right here, job description, what you did all day. And of course, you know, they don't provide very much space and they say you can leave more space in the remarks. But honestly, this is where you want to try to put everything in because this is where the government employees will largely look. Okay. So what I usually tell people is you want to focus, you know, you only have so much space as you can see. So you want to focus on the job descriptions that match your limitations the best you can. So let's say, for example, going back to the waiter, let's say that your limitation, your disability is making it hard for you to stand all day. So when you describe the job, you want to emphasize the parts of the job that relate to that limitation. So I would say in this job, we would have to stand all day. And really, the more you describe the physical demands of the job, the better. So let me give you another example. Let's say that your job was to be that legal assistant. So the legal assistant, they have to be on the computer all day, typing all day. And sure enough, let's say that the individual develops carpal tunnel and they can't use their hands very much. So when you describe this job and what you do all day, you would want to emphasize for much of the day, we had to do lots of typing, handling, writing. And that relates, you'll see and later on, that helps because that will match, the job description matches with the impairments. And so when you present the case, when you present your medical side of the case and they compare that to your past work, they can see the conflict and your chances of winning will go up. Of course, don't make anything up. We're just talking about what to highlight here. So you want to highlight the physical demands of the job that match your physical limitations. And if they're mental demands of the job, then you will want those to match your mental limitations if you have any mental limitations. So let's say, for example, someone develops, they have some kind of traumatic event in their life, and so it makes it to where they struggle to be around people, where their past job was actually being a salesperson. Of course, the way you describe the job is you'd spend a lot of time talking to people, collaborating with people, and that would match the limitation that the individual has. And so that is my advice on how to fill out this section. Okay. In this section right here, in this job, did you use machines, tools, technology, writing reports? Here, what they're doing is they're looking for skills that you have that could transfer to other work. Well, the more skills you have, the less likely they will find you disabled. So what I tell people here is you do want to answer this honestly, but you know, every job that has some kind of tool and equipment. So what are they really talking about here? In this section, I would say using machines, tools, and equipment that requires training, requires skills, not things you can learn in 30 days. So if it's something that, let's say a computer, in every office thing, is that a machine? Technically, it's yes, but I don't think that's something that requires special training to turn on a computer. So in that sense, you would put no. So a special machine would be something that it's unique, requires training over 30 days. If so, then you would put yes. Same thing as same thing dealing with technical knowledge or skills. So if it's the kind of thing that requires certificates or special training in order to get it, then you can say yes. If no, then you can put no. Again, every job requires some training, some knowledge, some skills, but we're talking about the kind of skills and knowledge that could then transfer to other jobs where you can say, hey, I have this skill, therefore you should hire me. If you couldn't brag about that in a resume, then you don't need to say yes in this work history report. And finally, the same thing for writing, completing reports, performing duties like this. Well, every job I can think of, you're going to write something. You're going to write a note on some kind of note. There will be some kind of report. But these, what they're looking for again, is skills that could transfer to other work, bragging rights, so to speak. So if you could not put it on a resume, I would not put it on this report. Okay. In this section right here, in this job, how many total hours did you do? Did you do each of these things? a lot of people get confused on this section. There's only 8 hours a day. So I've had people that try to make every single box, when you add up all the numbers, make it add up to 8 hours. I do not recommend that. Really, what I would recommend is putting in a number here that reflects what your capacity or you're expected to be able to do. So on a job, like going back to the waiter job, they're expected to stand probably all 8 hours a day. If they could not stand for 8 hours a day, that might impede their ability to do that job. They're also expected to walk probably 8 hours a day. They might be expected to sit at least 2, probably 4 hours a day. Well, when you add that up, that's over 8 hours a day, of course. So really, they're saying you want to look at each one of these physical demands in isolation and say, out of 8 hours, what are you expected to physically be able to do? And if it's 8 on everything, that's okay. So with that in mind, what you want to do is be thinking about your past work, the one that you write down here, and think about what is I guess, the most demanding, the day with the most physical demands, and describe that, because you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if there are some days that are more physically demanding than others, and you could not do that, then you could no longer do that job. So let's describe the most physically demanding day of that job. So if I were to go and say, let's say the legal assistant job, 3 days out of the week, you can sit at the desk all day, but there was 2 where they had to go on these office runs and go out and about and had to be on their feet all day. Well, then to be able to do that job from its most physically demanding viewpoint, you would put in 8 hours walking, 8 hours standing. Okay. So that's how I recommend this. The more you identify the physical demands of your job, the less likely you'll be able to do it, and therefore the more likely you'll win the case. So, but again, we always say be honest with Social Security. At least you now know as far as what to focus on, what to highlight is essentially you want to highlight the strongest physical demands that you're expected to be able to do, not necessarily what you actually do most of the time. Okay. Lifting and carrying. So this is a little bit when you say, here they don't actually say lifting and carrying. So under this section, lifting and carrying, you want to, again, the same philosophy. Think about the heaviest things you're expected to be able to do, not necessarily what you do all the time. And you can put in here what you're expected to be able to do. They do in this section give you a chance to explain how often you do that, and that's okay. You can say, once a day I have to pick up this big heavy cart. Big heavy box, and it weighs around 30, 40, 50 pounds. So when in doubt, let's say if you're, sometimes we don't really know how much things weigh. So I would be careful about low estimates. So if you have to go and try to recreate it or think about it or Google it or something, and be sure that before you say it's something less than 20 pounds, do you really actually know how much it weighs? For example, I've had some people say they can lift 20 pounds, and I said, well, how do you know you can lift 20 pounds? They said, and they said, well, I go grocery shopping, I grab a gallon of milk. Well, to them, it feels like 20 pounds because it's heavy, but it's actually 8.5 pounds. So when you describe your lifting and carrying, what's the heaviest thing and how often you did it, if you do put pounds to it, make sure you're for sure know what it actually weighs. Okay, if you don't know the pounds and you just describe it by object, then that's fine. We'll let Social Security figure out what those things weigh. Well, yeah, that actually segues straight into this. So check the heaviest weight lifted. You want to be accurate on this. The heavier the things are, the more likely you win. But you don't want to misstate. We want to be as honest as you can. But do not underestimate how heavy things are. Check the weight you frequently lifted. That's like up to 2/3 of the day or 1/3 of the day. And then finally, this section at the bottom. Do you supervise other people in this job? So this goes back to the theory that we gave in the beginning, which was the more skills you have, the more bragging rights you have, the more you could transfer to other work, the less likely you're disabled. So we don't want to highlight skills that you actually don't have. So sometimes when they say, do you supervise other people? You kind of want to be careful about saying yes to that if you really don't have the right to hire and fire them. If you're just an influential person and people listen to you, that's one thing. Supervising is a kind of a title. It's a title that you have and people report to you. So if they are reporting to you, you'll say yes. And how many people? Okay. What part of your, and you just describe what part of your time was spent supervising those people. And in this section, right, this little question right here, could you hire and fire them? That's a very good, if the answer is no, you may want to reconsider whether or not you really are supervising them or if you're just more of a lead worker. So, and here we have, are you a lead worker? These two questions are the government's way of trying to sort out whether or not you really do supervise. So if you end up saying no to either one of these things, you probably want to say no up here, and you just skip. You end up just skipping it. If you say no here, then you don't have to fill all this out. Okay, so that is it. This is the work history report. Every other page is basically the same, well, except for the last, and I'll go over that in a second. Again, this is the table of contents, and then for each one of these jobs you've described, and again, you can do it by category rather than specific employer. You then describe in detail what you did. You want to highlight the physical demands. You want to, you do not want to highlight skills unless you really were trained and could brag about it. And that is the big picture, okay? I hope this was helpful. Let me just go to the final page. The final, the final page is just a place for you to put remarks. So sometimes in some of these jobs, you feel like you may feel like you need to explain something else or something that couldn't fit on the form, you could put it in here. Honestly, this page often is left blank, and that's okay. But you have it in case you need to say something that the form otherwise would not provide. And then at the bottom, you'll put in your address, city, state, and email, and the name of the person actually completing the form. Normally that is our clients. If someone is filling it out for you, it would actually put their name. Which then brings up one more thing I wanted to say. I used to fill this out for my clients, and then Social Security would not, after a while, they started discrediting it. They would say things like, well, if the lawyer filled it out, how do I know that this is the client's testimony and not the lawyer's testimony? So, and then we even the government went so far to send me a personal letter to our law firm, and they said, we would like it if you would stop filling out these forms for your clients and let your clients fill them out. I am allowed to give advice and advocate for my clients, but they have asked that we do not fill this form out. So really, it's best if the claimant, the one that is filing for disability, is the one that puts their name here if they can. And they fill this thing out the best they can. If there's misspelled words, if their handwriting is bad, that does not hurt the case. It almost helps the case. If they see that you struggle filling out a form, then you're going to struggle in the workforce. It actually increases, it may be actually persuasive that you are disabled. So don't worry about how pretty it looks or anything like that. So we're not trying to get a job. We're trying to prove that we cannot get a job. So yes, hopefully the person, if possible, the person filing for disability is the one that fills out this form. There's some situations where if you're blind, or let's say that you're for some reason medically incapable of filling out this form, then yes, of course, you'll have to get someone else to fill it out for you, and then they would put their name. And even in remarks, you could say something about why the claimant could not fill out this form. Okay. Thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions, of course, you can call us. And hope you guys have a great day. Thanks so much.